Hey guys, this is Andrew once again from the Balance Center at Gordon College. Got a few hairs trimmed since the last video. Tonight I wanted to switch gears and instead of kind of giving you thoughts on exercises and kind of home programs, talk about something that we probably don't talk enough about or focus enough on, and that's nutrition. When we look at nutrition, particularly for those that are active agers, 50 and above, there's some key things that I just want to highlight in the next 5 or 10 minutes. We're going to stay high level with it, but wanted to give you some tips and some thoughts in terms of focal points when it comes to nutrition. First of all, why nutrition? One of my favorite examples in working with clients and talking to them about nutrition is kind of the theme of calories in, calories out. And we'll get later on, we'll talk a little bit about, quality of calories and things of that nature. But if I, get on a treadmill and start walking, or if I get on a bike, chances are I'm going to burn off anywhere from 200 to 500 calories per workout. Again, a lot of variables there in terms of how we arrive at those figures. But the point is, you're not going to be able to make up for a poor eating week or even a poor eating day necessarily by going to the gym and cranking out an hour on the treadmill or an hour on the cardio. So it's really important to understand that nutrition and what we put in our mouths outside the gym is a ton more important than the caloric output that we're seeing through our workouts. Doesn't mean it's more important than the workout. It just means that we can't compensate through caloric output in our workout to make up for bad nutrition habits. So I'm going to give you my top 5 and then a bonus. Number 1 is water. Water, all the way down to the cellular level, helps cells succeed, and it helps us succeed. It makes us feel more full, so we're not eating all the time. It helps with regulating hydration in our immune system. There's just so many different things that water does for us, and that when we're in a dehydrated state can't happen. We lead terribly non-qualitative lives when we're living a life dehydrated. And unfortunately, Americans are dehydrated. If you're getting our emails, I put in there, a target goal of 90 ounces a day. That really is on the low end for most males. But one kind of caveat with it is we want to look at fluid intake. So we want to look at our water. We want to look at, if we're having soups, that counts. If we're having non-caffeine tea or decaffeinated tea, that counts. So we really want to be, 90 ounces and higher per day for all fluid intake. And you may say, well, how the heck do I do that? A lot of it has to do with goals and planning. I know for what I recommend for a lot of our clients is to pick a goal, so say 90 ounces, and then break it down into smaller, more usable pieces. So say your water bottle's 20 ounces, you're gonna get, almost 5, or we'll call it 5 water bottles full during the day. That allows you to break it down and to plan accordingly. Yeah, you're going to go to the bathroom a little bit more, but that means that we're flushing that system out. We're helping with our metabolism. We're doing all the things I just mentioned. Particularly as we age, we tend to take on more pharmacology. So we're taking more medications, and that's another reason to stay hydrated. We can't jam all that stuff through our kidneys and our liver and expect it to be healthy if we're not making sure that it's diluted and it's facilitated through water. So that's my number 1. My number 2 nutritional piece for active agers are veggies and fruit. when you have a meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you really want to kind of frame it around your vegetables and fruit, leafy greens, broccoli, carrots and celery, and all those fibrous veggies that are going to help not only metabolize what we eat, but also with our immune system. The same thing with fruit. As we age, we tend to lack fiber, and we tend to need fiber more for a variety of different reasons. And so hammer on the veggies and fruit. Again, I want to keep it relatively high level. We're not going to talk about weighing and getting, X amount of ounces in. But really, if you think about framing your plate with the fruits and veggies and then garnishing it with your protein and carbohydrates, and I'll get into that in a second, that's where we want to be. The third one that my third in my top 5 would be protein. Older adults and active aging folks really struggle with what we call sarcopenia. And that's a really fancy word for muscle wasting or muscle depletion. The building block for muscles and this is a commonly forgotten piece, the building block for cells, not just muscle cells, is protein. So we've got to focus on making sure that once we lay out our plate with fruits and veggies, that we have an adequate amount of protein on there. What's an adequate amount of protein? Well, depends on the source you go to. But what I can tell you is a safe amount of protein is 0.6 to 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight per day. Now, again, that's a lot of math. But the point there is that as we age, we've got to have protein. So 0.6 to 0.8 grams per pound of body weight per day. As we said, protein helps cellular function. It's a building block of muscle cells, and it helps stave off sarcopenia. It also helps us go the other direction and build lean muscle. So we've got our water. Okay, we've got our 90 ounces of water a day. We've got our veggies and fruit, framed our plate. Now we're bringing the protein in. We're kind of, garnishing it with that protein. I'm not going to talk a lot about carbohydrates, but they certainly are absolutely necessary. But they have to be the value carbs, as we call it. The carbohydrates that bring with them more fiber. If you can tolerate it, whole grain, whole grain everything. If you can tolerate it. For those that have celiac disease and other autoimmune issues, you want to stay away from the inflammatory, process that grain will bring with it. But when we look back, though, we also have value carbs in your vegetables and your fruit. So, again, it's not, we don't want to negate the carbohydrates, but we want to make sure that they're what I call the value carbs. So we're on to number 4, which is the timing of your eating and your consumption of food. When we get up in the morning, we'll have already fasted for, at the very least, the amount of time that we're sleeping. And I'll get into kind of how we want to structure food consumption at the end of our day in a second. But the timing matters. So you're going to want to have a breakfast, certainly a good breakfast, because you're breaking that fast between, we'll call it, 8 o'clock at night till 6 or 7 or whatever it is the time that we wake up. So you're talking 9 to 12 hours for most folks. So you got to have the breakfast. You always want to hydrate well with your breakfast. You should have a snack between breakfast and lunch. Have a lunch, have a snack between lunch and dinner, and then eat your dinner. So we want to spread out our food consumption throughout the day. It doesn't mean just because we're recommending that you eat more often that you're eating more calories, it means we're taking our existing total caloric intake and we're spreading it out over a larger period of time. It allows the body to process what we're eating more, so it's not turning unused energy or unused food into storage, which oftentimes is fat. It also helps us feel more satiated more completely throughout the day, so we're not craving things if we're leaving 4 or 5 hours in between our meals or our snacks. So 5 times a day: breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. I would also recommend, if you are exercising daily, which we all should be in some regard, to make sure that we have something within an hour after our workouts are done. It doesn't have to be a meal, just 100 calories, 150 calories, just a snack after our workouts. It's going to help make our workouts more worthwhile in terms of metabolism and in terms of proteins and muscle synthesis. So timing's valuable. The last thing on timing, it really is about shutting the eating down in enough time for our bodies to prepare themselves for rest. You don't want to have a giant meal before you go to bed. For those of you out there that have any sort of reflux, that's bad. But even if you don't have reflux, again, from a metabolic standpoint, we want to give our bodies the best opportunity that they have to use what we're giving them and use it effectively. So 3 hours before bed, shut the eating down. The fifth piece is one that I know I'm going to step on some toes and raise some eyebrows with, but I want to address it transparently, and that is the topic of diuretics. Now, most of us consume some sort of diuretic daily or weekly. Alcohol is a diuretic. Caffeine's a diuretic. And what that means is it forces our kidneys to excrete more fluid, more water. And that's not necessarily a good thing because it leads to dehydration, which we talked about on number 1. So am I sitting before you advocating for zero alcohol, zero coffee, zero caffeine? No. All these things that I say to you are just being mindful of them. And the couple pieces I say for each, hopefully you'll be able to take those and plug them into your daily lives. So be mindful of your alcohol intake. Be mindful of your caffeine intake. Is 1 cup of coffee a day bad? No, absolutely not. In fact, there's some great studies out there that say that coffee, and its antioxidant properties and many other things can lead to protection for us. But we just don't want to be drinking it in excess. Aside from being a diuretic, caffeine and alcohol also challenge the absorption of nutrients. There's been some great studies done in terms of looking at consumption of food with alcohol or with caffeine and then without, and looking at how much absorption is actually taking place. What's going on in our body in terms of consuming, processing it, and excreting it, and so we have to be mindful of that as well. So not shutting coffee and alcohol down, just being mindful of how many caffeinated beverages and how much caffeine we're taking in, because it will have, it could have a negative effect. The last piece on the diuretics, specifically on caffeine and alcohol, is back to the pharmacology piece. Both of those substances, caffeine and alcohol, can interact with medications. Particularly with caffeine, it can increase your blood pressure, so you want to make sure that you're aware of what you're doing when it comes to the pharmacology that you're involved in, the drugs you're taking to help with other things. You just want to make sure that you're safe with it. All right, so we've been through 5: water, fruit and veggies framing our plate, protein as a garnish, timing, when are we eating, how much are we eating, when are we shutting things down, caffeine and alcohol, what role do they play in our overall health and well-being. And then I'm giving you a bonus, and that's the food log. And again, you're listening, you're going, I can't even remember to eat breakfast, let alone write something down. And I get that. I mean, do I keep a food log this second? No. Have I done that in the past? Absolutely. So if you're somebody that has kind of burned through my top 5 previously mentioned topics and saying, well, I can't even remember, one of those, take a week and write it down. So this is what I would challenge you to do. Take 1 week, Monday through Sunday, write out everything that you're eating when you do it. Yep, you're going to take your piece of paper, your notebook, or your phone around, and you're just going to basically document what you eat and what you drink and when you're doing it. So those are the 3, I'm not looking for measurements and weighing and how many ounces. I would challenge you with is I had a ham sandwich with cheese on it for lunch. I had an apple, and then I had, 20 ounces of water or whatever. We do want to track our water intake and beverage intake. So do that, every meal and every snack for 7 days, including the time. That's important as well. And if you feel like it, you certainly don't have to. You can just throw it my way if you wish, and we'll answer any questions you have on it. Or I do analyze food logs as part of what I do with working with clients, so we can go that route. So hopefully the top 5 is helpful for you. As what we do at the Balance Mobility Center, we want to stay in our scope of practice. We're not registered dietitians, but we are certainly qualified to offer general nutritional advice. If you ever need anything or have any questions or want to dig deeper on this, I'm trying to keep this under 20 minutes. Feel free to reach out, andrew.walker@gordon.edu, and we'd be happy to help out. We wish you a great week ahead, and hopefully our nutrition top 5 gave you a couple things to think about in the days and weeks to come.